Brought to you by Penguin.
Sister Europe by Nell Zink. Read by Lisa Flanagan.
1. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights, Damian told his younger daughter Maxi, who had gone to bed early with a low-grade fever. It was sure to be something full-blown in the morning. He was German, but her mother was not, and since she went to a German school and spoke German with her friends, they had a family policy of speaking English at home. The ice melted and melted until it was all covered with water and floating on a lake that wasn't supposed to be there. And all of a sudden, it slid right into the ocean. Platsch! With both hands, he mimed a box sliding off a crooked shelf. Imagine a slab of ice the size of Greenland. She removed her thumb from her mouth and said, "How big is Greenland?" He had no idea. It was notorious for being smaller than it looked on a Mercator projection, but he felt sure it was large given that its melting would cause global sea levels to rise by something like 7 meters. Ignoring her question, he continued the bespoke story about a tsunami hitting their building. The ice fell into the ocean and made a wave so enormous it went right across the North Atlantic to Norway. He figured grafting on a little geographic instruction couldn't hurt. The giant wave went around Scotland and crossed the North Sea from England to Holland, and then it went to Hamburg and right up the Elbe for 100 miles. When it got to the mouth of the Havel, it hit the brakes and made a sharp left turn. All the ducks in the marshes jumped in the air. Alle hopp! He gave a little jump, raising his torso a few inches from the mattress, and then collapsed again so she could continue twirling his hair. It came up the Havel to Potsdam, and when it got to Wannsee, it made a right turn to the lake. And then it was at our house, a giant tsunami, all the way from Greenland. Looking satisfied, she said, "Mega." Giselher and Almut, those were their elderly landlords, came upstairs to film it on their phones. The counterfactual troubled him for a moment. The two hadn't climbed the stairs in years. But that didn't mean they couldn't, given sufficient motivation. "Were they dead?" She sounded hopeful. Reluctant to pause the narrative to explain that death brings immobility and is a bad thing, particularly in this case. The heirs would quickly commandeer the whole house. He replied, "No, nothing bad happened. The wave was tired out from going thousands of miles carrying debris." Her look told him he needed to define debris. It had dirt and junk and flotsam and jetsam and icebergs and houses and cars and ferry boats and fire trucks. He paused, though he could see that she liked the list. He felt insufficiently driven to go on naming objects because he was compulsively envisioning a parade of corpses already bloated and bobbing on the surface, as though they'd been dead for days. By the time it got to Berlin, it was so tired it was only 2 inches tall. It could barely move. It was primarily looking for a place to put things down. Where did it put them down? Siemensstadt. He didn't care to examine the perversity that made him name a working-class neighborhood. Low-lying areas near rivers were devoted to industry. It wasn't his fault. Did it have trees? She clearly wanted it to have trees, so he nodded. What else did it have? There were ants and bales of hay and chlorine and dolls and elephants and friendships and goats and hills and illnesses and jaywalkers and K-dramas. His recitation slowed as self-doubt took the wheel, attempting to wrest control away from him by force. And light poles and money and noodles and options and progress and quagmires and retrograde amnesia and sanity and trees and the universe and votive offerings and whales and xylophones and yahoos and zebras. He took her exhaled "ee" to be another request for trees.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?